One of my analogies is that every day is a school day. Welcome criticism to help your own learning. Be open to every opportunity when working to deliver a piece of business. Lots of people don't take constructive criticism well, but the way you're going to grow and learn is about looking for that and actively pursuing feedback. Even at a meeting that you've delivered, a project that's been completed, seek that feedback genuinely, and people will appraise. I would absolutely push to say, put yourself forward.
Welcome to the Payroll Podcast with your host, Nick Day of JGA Recruitment, Specialist Payroll Recruiters.
Hello and welcome to the Payroll Podcast. My name is Nick Day and I'm Managing Director of JGA Recruitment, Specialist Payroll Recruiters. And I'm really excited because today I'm joined by someone I've known for a number of years. He is Jason Davenport. He has quite the track record when it comes to holding senior positions within some of the payroll industry's leading service companies. And he is currently chairman of the board for the Chartered Institute of Payroll Professionals, also very familiarly known as the CIPP. He also runs his own payroll consultancy called Calendar Consulting, where he specialises in supporting clients in both public and private sectors, where he reviews payroll performance, looks at strategy and choices, and considers and helps with evaluations in relation to in-source and outsource services. Prior to that, Jason has held prestigious senior roles such as Chief Operating Officer for the HRS division at Capita, Global Payroll Product Manager at NGA HR, and Services Director at Logica CMG, for those that remember that business, which has changed a few times since then. For me, I'm really excited. For me, we've got someone right now who's at the pinnacle of the profession. I know that many of you listening will want to know how he got there and what you can do to follow a similar path. So we're going to cover all of that in today's podcast and a lot more.
5 quick questions.
So without further ado, I think it probably makes sense that I welcome Jason to the Payroll Podcast hot seat. How are you feeling, Jason?
Hi, Nick. Thanks very much for the welcome and such a great introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. I understand this is your first podcast. I feel very privileged. I think it might be the first of many after they hear that some of the content we're going to get through. So I'm excited to bring it all to life. We had a really good chat at the recent Reward Strategy conference where you started telling me about your journey into sort of managerial roles within payroll. And that's something that I'm really keen to for you to share with the listeners a little bit later on as well, because it's a really exciting story. So definitely stay tuned for that. Before we get there, I'm sure many of our listeners will already know that who you are, your reputation pretty much precedes you. But I wondered if you could just give us a little bit of an insight into first how you got into payroll, and of course your career trajectory, shall I say, or journey to date. Let us just give us a bit of an insight into to your payroll journey so far, Jason.
No, certainly, Nick, and a great place to start. Thank you. Yeah, I actually started my career out in industry as an office junior in the construction industry. And it was during that time of learning basic office administration when my financial controller said to me, "How would you like to consider payroll?" And for us then, that meant learning about the working rule agreements, within the construction workforce, how civil engineering worked and what the different rules and regulations were that backed those, and also considering national joint council agreements for the likes of the plumbers that worked as part of the teams as well. So it was a great opportunity to learn payroll, and actually at a grassroots level before computing was around. So I was building up calculations from gross to net with the pay calculation tables. And even our financial controller at the time wouldn't let us have calculators until we proved our numeracy. So that was really interesting for me. And I found that I had an aptitude towards both understanding the rules and the regulations, enjoying the numeracy of the work. And because of a large construction workforce that was paid weekly, we actually had the job satisfaction of delivering net results to the employee base week in, week out, and really felt a great sense of satisfaction at seeing that 100% accuracy delivered week in, week out. I guess to build on your question then about how did my career kind of move from there, I've always built out with a 5-year plan. I've always considered that important for anyone, with a career and how to manage that. And looking around me, I realized that those that got to the top within the construction industry were typically the engineers or the surveyors, the guys that had come up with that construction background. So I really wanted to develop my payroll career, and researched what was happening in the market at the time. And, some 20 years or more ago, the outsourcing remit was really coming into play. And so I looked at different outsourcers and who I might join. And that was actually when I joined CMG, having attended one of their sales pitches to see both what was their offering, but also to hear from some of the sales guys who didn't know why I was asking the question at the time, but to hear from them, what was it like to work within this business? And so I targeted CMG as my place to develop my career further.
Now, some people may not be familiar with CMG because I know you and I have been in this industry for a long time. We've seen the changes, the days of Rutherford Webb and Kalamazoo and so on. But for those perhaps a little bit newer to the industry, can you just tell us a little bit about, at that time, who CMG were? Because they were a big player.
Indeed, absolutely, yes. So Collins, Mills and Gorman were the original CMG that made Computer Management Group. And they were actually an Anglo-Dutch corporation that dealt with lots of IT capability. And at the same time, they were producing software for the payroll industry. PayFac 2000 was a government public sector based product that was developed by CMG. The founder members, Mills, he actually wrote a whole philosophy about how he wanted a business to be, and it was all built on meritocracy. So it was about what you put in was what you get out, and as hard as you wanted to work, there were no barriers to how far you could go within the business. That set the scene for real open door, open field for everybody to work at. And so I found the working for CMG a real refreshing approach to life and to development as an individual.
I'm going to jump in slightly because I don't want to give away I want to sort of prep the story that I think you're about to embark upon, which is quite an exciting one. So just again, give it a little bit of context. So I remember CMG and the PayFac 2000 system sort of many years ago, when I'd have clients going, Nick, as you say, public sector clients say, Nick, I need a payroll manager. They must have PayFac 2000 system experience. And as you mentioned, you started in a manual environment and there weren't that many systems around at the time. So PayFac 2000 was one of the real key skills to have back in the day. And CMG were one of the big payroll players in terms of outsourcing providers. But when we met at the conference recently, you gave me a great story, which I think you're just about to discuss then, but to give us some context of how you went from, just joining the business, obviously not being particularly senior at that time, into a real fast track process into a managerial process that ended up with you being a really senior player with at CMG. And I think it's without giving too much away, I think it's a business process that many other companies could really do well to adopt. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'll let you deliver it in the way that you did last time because it's fantastic. So I wonder if you could just reshare that fast track process you experienced at CMG that really got you onto your senior payroll journey. That brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, indeed, Nick. No, it's as you mentioned earlier, it's a fantastic concept and actually something that businesses may want to think about today in the way that they deliver this. They had CMG had a management development program, and anybody identified to become first level manager, and in CMG days, associate director was that first level of management. If you achieve that level, you had full P&L responsibility for a business, full responsibility for its clients, its team, its budgeting, and everything that went on around that. So in order to get people to that level, they recognized that individuals had to have skills that were broader than what their day-to-day operational skills may involve. So I had a program that supported me in understanding project management, people management, both in terms of performance and also poor performance, promotion and recruitment, etc. Client engagement, a very key part of the role of any director, of being able to speak with the clients, understand their needs, build proposals around that. Bid negotiation and sales and commercial awareness were also very big parts of the skill set that they'd be looking to test. And so whilst on a period of time to fast track and build out those skills, the pinnacle was a 3-day test that was held off-site. Being an Anglo-Dutch corporation, it was either held in London or in Amsterdam. My own was in London. The course was ran by managing directors of the business, and the way it was put together was you were essentially going to role play for the next 3 days. So there might be 5 or 6 people going through this at the same time. Your hotel suite will be your office. And the night before the course began, or the test began, you were given a whole group of folders which were all about this fictitious business that you were now owning. And in effect, the associate director that was responsible had left the business there and then. You were being parachuted in to a business that had both current contracts, current clients. It had opportunities for new clients, new sales opportunities. It had some great staff. It had difficult staff. It had projects that needed reviewing because they were moving into difficulty. So the whole gambit of what you would expect a director to be dealing with on any day-to-day basis was then set out, and your diary was set out as well for the next 3 days with gaps for new things to be put in, but also appointments to be kept. And obviously, in that kind of environment, there was travel time, etc., was factored in the way that it may be to allow for time between meetings and what have you. But the 3 days were then absolutely intense. Not only
it's like SAS selection for payroll leaders, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great analogy.
That's intense. As far as you're concerned, this is absolutely like a real life scenario, and that's the way you've got to try and approach it. Like this has actually happened. You've been, as you say, parachuted in. And the role play didn't stop at any point, did it? The managing directors, even at the bar, even after the so-called day had finished, they were constantly in character. So you had to keep this character up for full 72 hours.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. So the working day may finish, but then you go out to dinner and you had to stay within that. You're talking about your business. You're talking about things that are going on. And indeed, the adrenaline, therefore, was just kicking through your system all the way through that time. In fact, you could tell when clearly the managing directors didn't want to deliberately fail people, but they also, if people were cruising, they'd really turn the heat up. And I was even getting calls in my hotel room at 11 o'clock at night saying, come down to the bar, Jason. And I know they were wanting to do that to try and make sure that I didn't have enough sleep for the following day. But you could also tell that the heat was being turned up when they'd be trying to put more and more appointments in your diary or more things. And there was an opportunity where I rang to speak to an MD that I was told was out the country. And then the next time I rang to speak to him, I was told he was in another meeting at the moment. And I actually turned around to the secretary and I said, well, 2 minutes ago, he was out the country. And I could hear the MDs laughing down the corridor because they realized I'd tripped them up. But I have to say the culmination of that those 3 days really testing all levels of, project people, clients, sales management, then came to fruition. At the end of the 3 days, we went home. The following Monday, my managing director, he flew up from London to Manchester, Salford Keys, where I was running the team. And he got everybody together and said, right, I'd like to introduce you to your new associate director. And we're giving this business to Jason. And that was such a fantastic feeling. Yeah.
As you said, you did the whole Jerry Maguire thing. You didn't sleep, did you? You went full on. You want to make sure you were number one. That competitive spirit came out. But I remember you saying, it tested everything from your people management skills, your project management skills, client engagement skills, things like bid negotiation and sales and commercial skills. So, to have all that in a such a intense environment over 3 days. I mean, you must have actually, not only did you secure the role, but you must have developed your own skill set very, very quickly as well in the way that you approach things and manage, liaise with those with your MDs and in the way your thought process worked during that time.
Indeed. No, absolutely. And the incredible thing, the incredible experience coming out of that was then becoming an associate director and looking at the paths above me and the opportunities above me. You realize that everybody around you with that same title had been through the same experience. And so it was almost like joining a club, like a capability club, We've all
like getting a green beret.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I think it's so. Just to put this into a little bit of context, what did that associate director level role mean? So I know you then had quite a big remit, didn't you? You went from kind of the new remit that 3 day process gave you. What did that look like?
So it was then having all of the teams that were in the business reporting through me. So the managed payroll service teams, the marketing team, we had budgets for considering advertising and events. We had budgets for training and development. Far more client contact came into it, and literally managing the whole P&L from a day-to-day, month-to-month basis, and making decisions that were going to affect that business, for better, for worse, then suddenly sat on my shoulders. That wasn't to say I was the only person there. I'm supported by managing directors, but it was, suddenly it's a much bigger remit.
Fantastic. Well, what a journey. That is some journey. As you say, you can't get anywhere without support and peers and collaboration, but, to go through that process. I was slightly jealous when you told me. It's the kind of thing that I think I would have absolutely loved to have been involved in. I'm not saying I've done as well as you did, but right up my street, the competitive aspect, the quick learning, the knowing there's an opportunity at the end of it as well. So, yeah, I think it's a cracking story. So, that got you to the associate director level at CMG. You now had responsibilities, you say, for payroll managed service, big budgets, and so on. How did you then make the transition then from UK payroll delivery into international payroll management? And I guess you've got a lot of experience as well in onshore and offshore payroll operations. So how did that transition come about?
Yeah, that was a great question, Nick. With CMG being an Anglo-Dutch corporation, it also was growing quite rapidly at the time. Lots of acquisitions in the marketplace, different mergers. We actually merged with a business called Logica, which so became Logica CMG for a time. And at that point, the business had offices right across Europe, and Coca-Cola Enterprises came out to market looking for payroll services, not just in a single country, but looking at UK, Netherlands, France, and Belgium. And I had the great opportunity to work on the bid. It started looking at it from a UK perspective, but actually then I took on the challenge of going out to our offices in the Netherlands and France and understanding how we delivered services. And actually we didn't have service operation in Belgium. So I subcontracted with a very small Belgium operator called SD Works. And it just shows the size and scale of those today. At the time, SD Works were the number one operator in Belgium. And without having operations there, we needed to subcontract. And so I got involved in that whole writing up of the subcontract relationship, making sure that we had back-to-back key performance indicators. And in winning the sales journey with Coca-Cola Enterprises, which was working with Coca-Cola US, Coca-Cola Europe, Deloitte, who were their advisors, and our own teams, that really gave me an appetite for international work. So once the contract was fully established and running, I then looked at, I've done a lot of European work. Now I really want to look at further afield, and I looked at further opportunities for global work. And that was when I was delighted to meet Ken Puller for the first time and join his management team in Northgate Arinzo. So
you're giving us a little insight there, potentially to another trajectory that you're going through to become a chair of CIPP, because obviously Ken Puller is obviously a key player at CIPP as well. But this was obviously you first met him many, many years ago, which is, I guess we'll come back to that a little bit later on. So what was your first experience then of the services you were delivering with the onshore, offshore delivery model? Because you mentioned there that you introduced the management team at Northgate Arinzo.
Yeah. The great thing about Northgate Arinzo, as I joined them, they'd been bought out by KKR, a private equity house, and they were being supported in their whole drive to be truly global, which meant Northgate Arinzo at the time were a UK European-centric business, but they looked to purchase both tactically and strategically other businesses to give them a proper global footing. So they purchased Convergys out in the US and Procedure out in Australia and a number of other smaller tactical businesses to give them a proper global footing. Then not only did they say, okay, we bought these businesses, they actually put the money where the mouth is and got everybody together. So as operations director in the UK, I was very lucky and fortunate to work with my counterparts across the globe. So I've been fortunate again in my time to have worked across most of the European capital cities, out in Asia and across in the US. And we built up our understanding collectively of what are the services that we offer in country, how can we support those both locally, but also in developing a true offshore model, what work was best and most suited to go offshore and what should still remain onshore. And that allowed us to develop the kind of follow the sun approach that was that came about some years ago, where we could best utilize our offshore capability with the time differences. So we'd send work out east as our day was finishing, and as we'd wake up, that completed work would be back ready for us to continue on or to do other pieces with. It really was a very exciting time. And at that point, I got to work out in, a number of the Indian cities, such as Mumbai, Hyderabad, and Kochi, as well as out in the Philippines, in Manila. Building up that whole capability really gave me a much broader insight into things that aren't just payroll related. It's all of those different associated areas, and especially how different areas of the globe deal with those things,
Some beautiful countries as well. I mean, I've heard India's stunning. And also, I should mention here, so I don't know if in case people didn't quite pick up, you've now transitioned. So you're now at NGAHR at this point. I know obviously you ultimately became Global Payroll Product Manager at NGAHR, but if anyone missed that transition from CMG, you decided when you met with Ken Puller to join his management team. But so how were some of these countries? Do you have a chance to, how long were you in India for example?
Well, over the course of the years, I think I went out to India 6 times. Not only got time to spend with the teams and the operational teams, but also to explore some of India as well. So in Mumbai, I managed to go to Gandhi's house during one of the visits there. Down in Kochi, got to go and see the elephants being bathed, and got to visit tea plantations. So great to take opportunity to not just to see the operations there, but to see something of the country. And India, for anybody who's a first-time visitor, is a real explosion of the senses and a fantastic country to visit.
Fantastic. So, with all that, as you say, explosion of the senses, all that experience you're gaining, you're in a global role, you're managing and you say following the sun. There's some new ideas where you've got everything working 24/7 around the clock. You're obviously delivering at a very high level. What was it that brought you back to a UK-centric role? Because it sounds like you were really enjoying the international piece and you're, as you say, enjoying the different countries, the different cultures, the languages, the learning. I'm surprised that then your next move was to come out of the global piece a little bit and back into a UK-centric position. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so interestingly, and as I mentioned earlier, I've always taken a view of a 5-year plan, both to see in terms of career, but also with family. And I was sat on a beach in the Caribbean with the children, and realised then that I'd missed a birth. I'll come to that later. I'd missed a Holy Communion, which I'd joined by FaceTime. I'd missed a couple of birthdays when I've been working in Athens, and so it was a very conscious decision that said, okay, I'm going to move away from global work and take on a new centric role in the UK. And I asked the children and obviously the wife, Louise, how she felt about that. And they were all very supportive and happy for me to do so. And so I actually took a much reduced role when you think about stretch and breadth and bandwidth within Capita HR Service Division. But I think, as they say, you can't keep a good man down. So I was very quickly promoted through 2 levels to become Chief Operating Officer.
Amazing. Well, I can't say I'm surprised. I have to say as well, if you want a beach in the Caribbean with your kids, and it's at that point you realise you want to come home, then you definitely need to come home. And it'll be the other way around, right? That's when I think I'm loving this. But actually, if you're sat there in the sun and you realise that's not where you want to be anymore, I mean, there can't be any better sign to say it's probably ready to come back. But what a fantastic story. So that kind of leads you now into the world of Capita. As I said, you got right to the top again as Chief Operating Officer for the HRS division. And I know the listeners are going to be keen to find out more about how you then developed your career further again to become chairman of the CIPP, which obviously is a role that you hold at the moment. And of course, your plans for the future, because I will add here that, you do also now have your own business, your own consultancy. And we've got loads to get through today. So, if you stay tuned with us, you're going to find out a little bit more about Jason's journey into, launching his own business and what that means and what he's offering, and also his role at the CIPP and what he hopes to achieve in the future. But before we do, we're going to just find out a little bit more about Jason.
If you work in payroll and you haven't checked out our latest song called My Payroll Career, then it's just been released and it's available now on iTunes or Amazon. Here's a little snippet of it to get you started. Enjoy.
You see, I love payroll and payroll loves me. I don't mind liaising with HMRC. I love manual payments and calculating S&P. Yeah, payroll is the career for me.
And that was My Payroll Career, available now in iTunes and Amazon Play. Right, back to the podcast.
Time to find out more about you.
Jason, how would your friends or your work colleagues describe you?
Hey, great question, Nick, and thanks for that. I would hope and expect the friends would say I was funny, I was caring, and I am dependable. And hopefully that same note would translate to colleagues as well, who might add that I'm very transparent. I'm definitely an open book in the way that I deal with people. I absolutely have integrity, which I think is part of any key role when it comes to being trusted. And hopefully they would say I'm fun to be around.
Yeah, well, I can second that a little bit. We've certainly had a few beers over the years, but also great qualities that make for a great chair, right? You need all of those things to be a good chairman. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. Tell me something about you then that perhaps other people won't know about you. Although you may have given us a little bit in your last answer as to why you decided to come back to UK centric role. But what else could you tell us that perhaps other people won't know?
Well, let's give you a great headline, okay? I was once bodyguard to Princess Diana.
Wow!
So there's the headline.
Okay, that is a headline.
Right? The detail is slightly less glamorous. So it was a friend of mine's father was general manager for the Women's Hospital in Liverpool. And when a new ward was being opened by the princess, he needed to draft in some additional security to help on the day. So I was actually introduced to the hospital staff, especially the catering staff, as special forces.
Brilliant.
To the current security team, which meant I got an extra large breakfast.
There's a lot of theme here running through the SES selection and military operations. I think you might have missed your calling, Jason. What a fantastic! That's brilliant. That's definitely something I didn't know. We haven't had that story over any of these conferences to date, so that's a great thing to bring to the table. Fantastic. So a little bit different. You're abducted by aliens, and you want to learn more about our species. What item would you take with you?
Well, having worked globally and being away from the family for periods of time, I'd take a device that enabled me to video conference with home.
Great. Any particular device? Anything you're using at the moment? iPad, laptop?
Gadget
of choice?
iPad absolutely is the key for video conference, because then we've got a bigger screen to review on.
Yeah, no, we're not sponsored by iPad, but it seems to be a very common response. I seem to be giving a lot of free branding. What game or instrument would you teach them?
Well, recently I was in the Canadian Payroll Association conference, and at the end of the conference, I was lucky enough, Ken and I went and spent a bit of time with Patrick Culhane and his wife. Patrick's recently retired as president of the CPA, and they took us out in Toronto. And one of the evenings we spent at home with them, they introduced me to a game called Rumicube, and it's a number strategy game, and it's one that I've recently ordered to get a home for myself with the wife and the children, because it's a really good number strategy game. It really makes you think about how you're looking at it. So Rumicube is the shout out there for a game that I'd take and teach them.
Okay, I'll try and find a link. I've never heard of it. I'll try and find a link. And what I'll do, I'll put it in the episode notes. So if any of these, bear in mind, we've got a lot of payroll people listening here who have a passion for numbers, figures, and mental math and arithmetic. You might find we get a little bit of traction on that. So I'll put a link in the episode notes. If anyone else wants to challenge Jason in the future, they can go and purchase that. I'm sure it's on Amazon or somewhere similar. Fantastic.
Yeah.
What would you tell them about humans?
Now, thinking about this one, I think that I would tell them about our capacity to love and to learn. I wonder, Nick, have you ever seen the movie Meet Joe Black?
I have. God, a long time ago. Yes.
Right. So Anthony Hopkins, if you remember, he plays a billionaire coming to the end of his life, and Brad Pitt plays Death. So Death comes to Earth and he takes on a human form to better understand what humans are like. And in the film, Anthony explains to Brad how love is about trust and responsibility and taking the weight of your choices, and how the depths of his love for his children are multiplied by infinity and take him to the depths of forever. And I think that will give them a glimpse into how wonderful life is to be a human.
Wow. Love that. That's deep. God, I'm loving that one. That's great. Let's go watch the film again. Brilliant. Oh, well, that in mind then, what truth or human trait would you hold back?
Well, not aware of their motive of why they'd taken me, etc. I would not tell them that humans are fearless and have an incredible capacity for change, because we wouldn't want to give away all of our secrets. So I'd hold that back. Yeah.
So we're going back to your strategic SAS thinking here, Jason. I like it. We're always going back to that part. I'm going to ask you one final question here then. So if you had any superpower, what would it be and why?
A superpower? Wow, it'd have to be for healing. A capacity for healing, yes. And I think that actually is what my name means in Greek. Jason, I think, means healer in Greek, yeah.
Fantastic. You know what? I've just done I recorded another podcast on my other channel, the HRL&D podcast, and it was the same answer, same superpower that Joanna Vinacore, who I recorded with, would give as well. So, it's nice to see that the charitable side of the HR and payroll professions coming through, which is good. Well, listen, we're going to jump to a quick advert break here. Then we're going to come back. We're going to find out a lot more about Jason's role with the CIPP, the future of payroll as he sees it, and of course, a little bit more about his own business and how he got started with that as well. So stay tuned. We'll be back in one moment.
Einstein famously said that insanity was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We believe it's time to try a new approach to recruitment. JGA Recruitment specialise in recruiting the top 15% of payroll and HR talent using innovative 24/7 attraction strategies that are proven to improve quality of hire, candidate retention and return on investment. De-risk your recruitment process today and hire better talent faster with JGA Recruitment. Visit jgarecruitment.com to find out more. 5 technical questions.
So, Jason, you have been non-exec director with the CIPP for more than 6 years now. You became chair in December 2018. Tell us a little bit about what that role involves.
Yeah, cheers, Nick. Being a non-exec meant having to sign up to public life or life in public office. So there are certain rules and regulations and ways in which you to carry yourself and to carry your business practice, etc. And actually being as a membership organisation and being elected to the board those years ago, that was a great honour at the time. Also allowed me to bring all of the experiences that I've learned before around strategy, board direction, and supporting the membership needs and wants. Being key to that role. So incredibly fulfilling for me to give something back to the industry as a non-exec, and to be able to support those meetings and directions and view with all of the experience that I previously held. Moving into chairmanship is, although I spent 2 years as vice chair, you never really feel the role until you're walking it yourself, and I'm really enjoying the time that's being spent as chair, both in working with our partners, working with broader industry across the globe with the likes of the American and the Canadian payroll associations. It's just been fantastic, and I take the role as, although it's very much a figurehead, it's also my role as is to support and lead the Institute, and so work very, very closely with Ken as chief executive to make sure that the executive and the operational direction is where we'd want it to be.
And you've got all of that, big business payroll service provider experience behind you as well to see, I say that because it's those businesses that are always trying to be 2 steps ahead for the future to know what's coming. And I think, that something that's going to be, I'm sure, invaluable to the CIPP is having someone at the helm, yourself and Ken, of course, who have both come from similar environments that are aware of how quickly technology is changing, but also, how that specifically impacts payroll, and legislate, not just technology, but legislation as well, service delivery. And as you mentioned, payroll is going more and more global all the time as businesses go more global. And, you and I met in LA a few weeks ago. We've met at different conferences. I know you went out to Canada just after that. So you've got the travel piece back in your life again a little bit with this role. But I think it's a great thing for the Institute. And, as a specialist payroll recruiter, we try and align ourselves as close as we can with the CIPP because, it's we're both hopefully passionate about raising the profile for the industry. I know that something you've been really passionate about is not just raising the profile of the profession, but encouraging new entrants to the industry to consider a role in payroll, pensions, and reward. And I think it's it's a fantastic role. And I would argue, and I'm sure many would as well, it's one of those pinnacle roles within the payroll professional that you've achieved, which is kudos to yourself, sir. Fantastic stuff. So, listen, what are the targets or objectives for you then as chair of the CIPP? Because I think you mentioned you get a term of 2 years. Obviously, you started in December 18. You've obviously, I would assume, would have achieved some of those objectives. I'd be interested to know what those objectives were that hopefully you've started to see come to fruition. But also going forward, what else do you think can be done to raise the profile of payroll, and not just in the UK, but globally?
Yeah, I think, well, first and foremost, in the UK and the Institute itself, we're going to continue to walk the halls of Whitehall and press for positive change where needed in terms of legislation. So that that continues on unabated with our policy teams. What I was very keen to do in coming in as chair was looking at the membership needs and the training and qualifications that are offered to make sure that they're relevant today. One of the great things about having children in my life with and looking at them and how they learn and develop is realizing that with new technology, with new learning styles, we need to continue to evolve, not to do away with the past, but to make sure that whatever learning is delivered is blended in a manner that meets the needs of the workforce today. So we have a couple of task force that have been set up to review that, and we're actually now starting to enable some of the objectives that were and some of the recommendations that came out from those task forces, which takes some time to deliver, but we're absolutely on the road to deliver those, and I'm looking forward to tutor training in July to speak to the CIPP tutors about what that means for them.
Great, fantastic! I was delighted to be fortunate enough to be involved in one of those task forces as well. So I can firsthand say that the CIPP really did reach out to everyone in all walks of the industry, not just those processing and managing, but those that see it from different eyes to try and get the opinions of everyone to try and make it more relevant. So I've firsthand seen your influence in some of those changes, which is great. But what about on the global side? What's the CIPP doing to sort of raise the profile globally? Because we're seeing businesses now we're in an era of globalization, although that's been said for years now, but you see it more and more now. In particular, we're getting a huge rise in international payroll people being required, and companies taking on or merging or acquiring other companies in different countries. What are the CIPP doing to raise the profile of payroll globally?
I think one of the key things that we reviewed quite recently in terms of strategy was wanting to make sure that we are focused and deliver well within our particular subject matter expertise. So within the UK, CIPP very focused on delivering to our UK membership and for their needs. And that doesn't mean to say that we're not looking at other areas, but we wanted to be master of one rather than a jack of all trades, if you like. But in linking to global work, it's still incredibly important to us to work alongside our colleagues in other countries. And that's why we have such a great working relationship with the US and Canada. Our working relationship continues to grow with Southern Ireland, with South Africa, with Australia. And we're very keen for other countries to join us as well in terms of how we signpost and work together. So there will be some areas that we would absolutely signpost towards a different country because that's the specifics of what might be needed by the membership. But there are other areas where we can help and support when it's maybe a more general piece in terms of, what does global work look like? What do I need to consider as a global manager? And obviously we work with some great people and colleagues alongside that who bring their experience to bear for us as well. So I think in a nutshell, Nick, it's very much about signposting where appropriate, but taking account where we need to. And continuing to listen to the membership and their needs.
Fantastic. And I know something that we've always advocated here, if you are a member of not just CIPP, but any of the, a membership of any kind of organization that is championing a profession, do get involved, do try and give your opinions back, because it's the membership views and opinions that really help shape the strategies for institutes such as the CIPP. So I know a lot of people are always asking me, how do I get involved in this, or how can I raise my own profile? A lot of it starts with involvement with membership institutions like the CIPP. So and certainly in your own example, Jason, I know you've always been very active in raising the profile across the board. And I think there's, if you're listening to this and you are a CIPP member and you have something on your chest that you want to suggest, then, there's a platform there for you to do it. And, I would definitely recommend that involvement as much as possible. Now, there'll be loads of people listening to this podcast, I've mentioned it a couple of times, wondering what they can do, Jason, to, get into the CIPP, to get to the top of the profession, and whether you're going to become chief exec or chair or just have a senior role, whether it's with the CIPP or whether it's with one of the major payroll providers. Obviously, you're fortunate enough to have held senior positions within both sides. You've also launched your own payroll business, and that's something that many of our listeners say, how do I take that step? How do I get that? And what do I need in my armory to be able to be in a position to launch my own payroll business? So as someone who's kind of achieved all of the three pinnacles of the profession for many people out there listening to this. It would be churlish of me not to ask, what advice you would give to someone who is listening to this right now, has similar ambitions, wants to perhaps either have their own business or wants to get involved more in the CIPP, or wants to get to the top of their profession within the business they're working for. What advice would you give?
Well, that's a great series of questions, Nick. And I think,
there's a few in there.
So let me try and distill into, I think a lot of it is around, it comes down to character and what you want to be as an individual. And I think first and foremost, it's about putting yourself outside your comfort zone. Put yourself forward and don't look back. I also, one of my analogies is that every day is a school day. And to put that into more context, it's really about welcome criticism to help your own learning. Be open to every opportunity when working to deliver a piece of business. Lots of people don't take constructive criticism well. But the way you're going to grow and learn is about looking for that and actively pursuing feedback. Even at, a meeting that you've delivered, a project that's been completed, seek that feedback genuinely, and people will appraise some of the things you may be able to take on board. Other things you might think, well, I'm going to look at that later. That's not for today. But I would absolutely push to say, put yourself forward. Lots of people have said of myself that, you were in the right place at the right time. But of each stage in my career, there was plenty of other people alongside me. The difference was I was the one that was willing to take the step.
That's a great way of putting it, to be fair. That's, if you see a step or an opportunity in front of you, as you say, try and grab it and don't look back. And podcast is a great example of that. I approached you and said, do you want to do a podcast with me? I don't think you hesitated for too long. But, it's something, it's your first ever podcast today, and it's something, a walk into the unknown for you again. So, it's a relevant example right now, I think. But while we're on the subject, so you've also started doing consultancy business, which I think you launched in December 17. I think I mentioned in some introduction that that's focused on supporting clients, both public and private sectors, where you review payroll performance, look at strategy choices. Obviously you're an expert on in-source and outsource models as well. The business is called Calendar Consulting. And now I know there's a story behind that name because you told me about it at the conference. So I'll let you just explain where that name came from in a moment. But I wondered if you could also share the story about how you came to the conclusion that this was the right time for you to sort of launch your own business in 2017, and a little bit more about the objectives for it going forward.
Yes, certainly. No, thanks. Well, let's do the name first, and then I'll talk about the where their experience came in. The name, my eldest daughter Gabrielle, I used to take her to sea cadets with her friends as families. We'd rotate that, the to and fro from the sea cadets. And one of the girls used to always get into the car and say, "Hi, July." Now, if you think of my name, Jason D, July, August, September, October, November, and December, the first letters of each of those months actually spells out my name. So calendar has a very nice fit in terms of monthly, weekly, half yearly calendar cycles of payroll. But it actually fits that my name is on every calendar out there.
So you got your name from one of your kiddies' school friends. I think it's fantastic. In the back of the car. There you go. It's clever. So what are the objectives then? Yeah, I think she should go for it. So tell me a little bit about what the business is doing now, and what are your objectives going forward?
Yeah, so you asked about the journey to how did you come to set up. It got to that position where I felt I'd naturally wanted to do something out on my own. Start up on my own, see if I could make a tranche for myself in that way, recognizing that my experience had a lot to bring to the table in terms of experience, and there was a natural push back in October 17, November 17 that helped me to do that. It's interesting that I actually look at the way the kids make their choices. We'd taken Charlotte out to dance in New York because she was part of a dance competition, and her troupe got through, did really well in the competition. And then as we're flying back home, she turned around and said to me, "Right, Dad, that's me done with dance, and I want to be captain of the hockey team." So the kids make some really just very solid decisions and go, "Right, that's what I'm going to go with now." And I thought, you know what? It's about time I did something similar. And so in setting up, what I'd experienced, especially with the outsourcing experience that I have, was that too often clients abdicate when they outsource, and they lose their intelligent client capability because they lose knowledge out of the business. And outsourcers, this isn't a total generalization, but in a drive for profit, sometimes they can miss key deliverables. And so what I've been able to do thus far in the last 2 years of working with a variety of clients, as you mentioned, both public and private sector, is bridge that gap almost to make sure that the client, where it has been lost, the intelligent client, help them build that back in, because it isn't about abdication, it's about delegation. And also with the outsourcer, help them to understand that the industry that they're serving better by almost being an interpreter, in understanding the language that both businesses talk, and sit in the middle there and make sure that the relationships build and work through from that on the best way possible.
Excellent. Well, of course, you understand the language of not just payroll, but also the language of the service providers potentially they're looking to outsource with, having been, at the helm of those as well. So, sometimes we advise a lot as a payroll recruiters that, if someone's going through, whether it's a system implementation or another kind of transition, a new global payroll implementation, whatever, it's always good to have someone on your side of the fence, who is an expert like yourself, working with those service providers to make sure that, not just that it's being delivered correctly, but there's an accountability trail that's developed and a framework that's developed that everyone understands what they're trying to do. And I think, as you say, if you lose that payroll knowledge, from the client side, it can be quite difficult to keep control of that partnership and make sure that it works best for you. So, we're seeing a lot of demand for experts like yourself, on the contract side. And, as you say, you're still delivering a lot of these projects on an ongoing basis through your consultancy. And it's definitely, as more people go through transitions and system changes on a regular basis, as technology advances, something that seems to be more and more in demand. So I would imagine the future's looking pretty bright for you at the moment, Jason.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks.
Well, so we're going to open the payroll vault.
Entering the vault.
What is one piece of advice you would give to someone working in payroll right now?
I think I would tell them to take every opportunity you can to develop more, and don't wait to be asked. Put yourself forward. If you know you can make a difference, put yourself forward.
Excellent. With the benefit of hindsight, what would be the one career decision you would change?
Now, I've been very structured in my career choices today. So I've always had a plan for where I want to be, and I've changed my career, as you've heard, to fit with that plan. However, when Charlotte was born, she's 14 on the 29th of June. And if I could change anything, it would be that I was here in the UK when she was born, because I was actually working out in Brussels.
Ah, bless you. Yeah, I can understand why that might be something you'd want to change. But hey, so she since had developed a friend that gave you a company name. So,
Yeah.
If you had the power of foresight and could change the entire payroll industry with one action or improvement, what would that action or improvement be?
I would dispel the myth of pressing the magic payroll button. And all that works, raising the profile of the industry is all about recognizing the value of the profession. It's often unsung until something goes wrong. And too easily is payroll referred to as, that's just pushing the button. So yeah, I would look to dispel that myth. Yeah.
The big magic red button. Now, interesting, it's going to give me an opportunity to give a little bit of a plug for something that's coming, actually, now you've mentioned that. So while I have listeners on board, if you're still with us at this point, there is going to be a new podcast coming out soon. It's probably going to be, I think, only 6 episodes long. It's a bit of a fiction stroke factual based on facts of the podcast. I don't want to give too much away, but it's called The Payroll Apocalypse. And I will mention that magic red button may make an appearance in the first or second episode of that podcast. So look out for that. I'll be advertising it shortly. It's going to be a lot of fun. And actually, I will need everyone, including Jason's, I would imagine, input into that podcast to see how it develops. So stay tuned. Keep an eye out for some advertising that's going to be coming out on LinkedIn and other social media about the Payroll Apocalypse podcast. It's going to be launching, I think, in mid to late July. But that magic red button, as you say, that people think that people will press to run the payroll will definitely be front and center of a particular episode. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, back to the vault. Jason, who motivates you and why?
Oh, I have to answer that one with my children. Watching their approach to learning, watching their approach to new technology. My youngest, Patrick, who's now 11, he doesn't even type. He just speaks to Siri and tells Siri, send Dad a text to say I'm going to be in 10 minutes. So he doesn't even type out the text himself. He just tells Siri what to do. And I think their approach and use of technology is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. My daughter's the same. She'll walk in and say, Alexa, set an alarm for 5 minutes. I just realised I've got Alexa in here. It might just have set it in the background. You'll hear it repeat itself. If you didn't work in payroll, what would you be doing?
Do you know what? I've really enjoyed working with people, and having had the opportunity to support and develop so many people in the industry over the years, I guess I unofficially spend a lot of time coaching and mentoring, and perhaps doing that on a more permanent footing would be very enriching.
Great. Fantastic. Well, I think that pretty much brings us to a close. It's been an exciting journey. I think everyone listening would have found out a lot that they would not have been aware of prior to this podcast. I think your journey into, senior management is a fascinating one, but also the fact, the enlightenment that you've given us to taking opportunities and where that can lead you is a fantastic one that hopefully people listening can really take away and use that advice to progress their own career. So thanks ever so much, Jason, for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know we're going to be meeting up again shortly at a client event soon at Henley, so I'll look forward to that. Thanks ever so much for joining me. I will put links, of course, to Jason's LinkedIn profile in the episode notes. So if you do want to find out more about his consultancy services or just find out more about Jason himself, you can access that link. I'll also put a link to the CIPP in the episode notes as well. But if you do want to find out more about membership for yourself, then it's cipp.org.uk. Fantastic membership opportunities for you, and it give you a host of benefits if you were to join. So do take a look at that if you're listening to this and are not familiar with the CIPP. That brings us to a close. So Jason, thanks ever so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate this opportunity.
No, my pleasure. And I will look forward to speaking to everyone again in a couple of weeks.
You've been listening to the Payroll Podcast with Nick Day of JGA Recruitment, specialist payroll recruiters. If you would like to feature on a future podcast, please contact us. For a wealth of world-class payroll content, please visit us at jgarecruitment.com. See you next week.